Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Trace with you here. We're going to be doing a little bit different tonight. KD is not with us. He's unavailable at the time. Steven is not with us as well. He's off doing some important things. So it's just Trace for now, but I am not alone. I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Jacob Lindroth, a.k.a. Lenny, as the inner circle calls him. But so he's very knowledgeable about Marshall, always knows his stuff, and it's going to be really cool to hear his perspective on here this evening. We're going to talk about this most recent game against FIU, a very impressive win, and then get into the upcoming game against FAU, which is a really big game in terms of the Conference USA East Division. So, look, this is going to be a pretty interesting episode, I think. I'm not, like I was saying to him a minute ago, I'm not the best at this moderating thing. KD definitely outshines me there, but I'm going to give it my best and see how it goes. So we'll get into it here, starting with the FIU game. Marshall gets the 38-0 win over FIU. FIU is just a pretty lowly team this year. I mean, not a whole lot. They don't really have much. They're down. They're trending in the wrong direction. But Marshall goes out and does what they should do. I mean, they beat a bad team the way you should beat a bad team. And, that's what they've done the last couple of games they've played against North Texas and FIU. They're starting to look a little better. Marshall really just dominates this game basically from start to finish. Looking at some of the numbers, Marshall has 456 total yards in this game to only 288 for FIU. So, I mean, that's a big size difference there. Marshall very balanced as well, 210 passing, 246 on the ground. They really gashed them, big time. 24 first downs for Marshall, only 15 for FIU. Another, difference there. And then, of course, the big one for Marshall, 0 turnovers, and FIU had 2 turnovers. So anytime Marshall can be +2 in the turnover margin, I like their chances. Time of possession, pretty even, 30 minutes, 47 seconds for Marshall, 29 minutes and 13 seconds for FIU. Looking at a few individual statistical numbers for Marshall on this day, Grant Wells had a solid, not a flashy game, but a solid game, 20 out of 25 for 184 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. So he had a really high completion percentage, but they didn't lean on him as much in this game, probably due to a lot of the weather conditions, and it was rainy, and they were running the ball so well. But Grant Wells did his thing pretty well, solid day for him. Rasheen Ali was probably the MVP of the offense in this game. I mean, 26 carries, 133 yards, 2 touchdowns, over 5 yards a carry. I mean, that'll get the job done any day of the week. So great stuff from Ali there. Leading receiver Shadid Ahmed had 5 receptions for 52 yards. Leading tackler for the Herd was Eli Neal. He had 8 total tackles and 1 quarterback hurry. Good game from him. And then Stephen Gilmore had a nice interception that he returned 22 yards. That was good to see. So a lot of good stuff in this game. There really wasn't anything really negative that I can think of. So, Lenny, what did you think about this game? Give you some overall thoughts about what you saw out there from this one.
Yeah, overall, I thought Marshall did a great job of controlling the pace of the game. It's something that I feel that we've struggled with at times this season. When we just get a lead, we kind of slow down a little bit. But to the end of the game, we just kept gashing them with runs, and I think that's what saved us. Like you said, Grant Wells had, I would call it an efficient game.
Yeah.
He got the job done for us, kept the incompletions low, just really kind of kept the passing game up to par to where we could just give the ball to Ollie or Sheldon Evans and gash them for a 10, 15-yard run. Yep. So overall, I thought the offense was very efficient. The defense was pretty solid as well. I would say we did a good job of pressuring their quarterback, forcing him to make some pretty tough passes, which a lot of times ended up in incompletions, thankfully. Stephen Gilmore was able to grab a pick, like you said, which was a big momentum gainer at the beginning of the game.
Definitely. I mean, it was a very well-rounded game. Seemed like, there wasn't really, even the special teams really got in on the action. I mean, the blocked field goal, 2 of them.
2 of them, yep.
2 of them back to back. I really did not think after the first time out, I did not think that would happen again. And sure enough, so special teams did their thing. I mean, it was one of those kind of games that I'm sure all head coaches look to have, a pretty complete game. And, what was made it even better was, Marshall typically struggles in adverse weather conditions when it comes to rain and stuff. Like Marshall has not had a very good history of success with that, and like they played really well in this game when in not so ideal conditions. And how many times have we seen over the years Marshall, playing down to their competition? It happens way too often, and thankfully it didn't happen in this game. But it was a lot of good stuff here. I mean, they're set up pretty well for the rest of the year if they can go on a run. Now the schedule is going to get a lot more difficult in November. They play 4 pretty solid teams. It's going to be difficult. But Lenny, what do you think about Marshall's chances at this point, sitting at 5-3 and 3-1? What do you think their chances are to possibly win the East Division again? And for the rest of the season, how's it looking for you?
I think it's looking a lot better than I would say a couple weeks ago. I've kind of seen a momentum switch with this team. I really think the game against FAU is going to be a teller as to how we're going to play the rest of the year. But I honestly think our team has everything it needs to get the job done. Offense has – Grant Wells has the weapons we've seen. Obviously, everybody knows Willie Johnson's capable of getting it done. Ahmed has really shown himself the past couple games. And Ali he's keeping the run game up to par with previous years. So as long as our offense can put points on the board and quit getting in the red zone and settling for a field goal or turning it over, and we can actually punch it in the end zone, I think the future's bright here for the rest of the season.
Absolutely. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities out there. I mean, if I was just thinking in my head of the other day, they don't have to win out to win the East, because I feel like if Marshall can beat FAU and beat Western Kentucky, they could afford to lose one of those other 2 games, because that would put Western and FAU both at 2 losses, and that would put Marshall at 2 losses in the East. So like so if in that situation, they would have the tiebreaker over both of those teams. So I think, obviously the UAB game is extremely important for obvious reasons. It's the 75 game. Everybody, you gotta step up for that game. The Charlotte game, that it's an important game because it's an East Division matchup. But if Marshall can really go out there and beat FAU and Western Kentucky, then I think they're set up really nicely. But it's a tall ask, but I think they're capable of doing it. It's just a matter of they have to limit the self-inflicting mistakes, the turnovers, the sloppiness. They've done a really good job of that recently. In this game, they only had two penalties against FIU. Very, very few penalties, and usually they're up to the 8 and 9 range, I feel like, every game. So they cleaned it up in this one. Hopefully they can keep it going. But getting into a little bit of grades here, we always grade the quarterback, the offense, the defense, the special teams, coaching, and overall. So starting with the quarterback, I'll go ahead and give mine, and if Lenny, if you want to give me yours, you can. If you can think of one or whatever on the spot. But quarterback grade in this game for Grant Wells, I went with a B+. I thought he was, like you said, I think efficient's the right word. 20 out of 25. That's really good. Not flashy, gaudy numbers, 184 yards, no touchdowns, but no picks, and that's been his bugaboo all year, is interceptions. So plus he had a rushing touchdown, which he's had, I think, 6 rushing touchdowns this year. So he's found the end zone very well on the ground as well. So I thought he had a good game. Didn't need to do a whole lot, but very efficient in his own right. So what would you give him for the grade in this one?
I would say a B, just a regular flat B. I think he played efficient. Like I said earlier, he really limited the incompletions that he threw, which is big time, because sometimes he'll try to make a play and throw a bad incompletion, and it just kills the drive and kills the momentum. But I really think he didn't try to do anything flashy or gaudy, like you said. He kind of just kept it efficient, kept it to a point where he was just going to make the throws that he needed to make, nothing special, because I think he realized that Ali was tearing it up on the ground game.
Yeah.
So I would give him a B.
Solid. It was definitely a solid day for him, and I think he needed that. He's been playing pretty well lately, but he has to stop with the interceptions. They have to stop. Through 8 games, 10 touchdowns and 10 picks, it's very eyebrow raising, and if Marshall wants to have a chance to compete for a championship again this year, he cannot keep throwing interceptions. So
right.
this was a good step in that direction, I think. Offensively, I went with an A overall. I thought the offense played really well. I mean, like some of the numbers I read off earlier, 456 total yards, 210 passing, 246 rushing, very good balance there. A lot of, success both ways. 24 first downs, no turnovers, won the time of possession, 9 out of 15 on third down. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Only 2 penalties. I mean, the offense was really good in this game. 38 points, of course. I mean, that's always a solid day in its own right. So I thought the offense was very good in this game, especially with, the conditions not being ideal. So offense, I thought, played really well. What would you give the offense in this one?
I would go with what you said, an A. Time of possession is always a big number I like to look at. Yep. And they played not super flashy. I would not say they played flashy at all. They almost lulled FIU to sleep, and then they would just take off with a 15-yard, 20-yard run. Or Grant would just hit a nice throw over the middle. And it was effective. Nothing really killed our drives. Like you said, 2 penalties. That's major in terms of what we've seen, where we've gotten down into the red zone and gotten a holding call or just a terrible random call, and it's just moved us back. But the run game, I think you said 247 yards on the ground. That's very impressive.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of that came probably in the first 3 quarters, but still to the fourth quarter, we kept gashing them with runs. And that's really what kept us ahead and kept FIU off the board, was keeping our offense out there more.
Definitely. I mean, you like to see those big rushing numbers. That takes a lot of pressure off of Grant Wells, which leads to him probably having more efficient games when the run game's going that well. I mean, Gene Ali is no joke. This guy is absolutely spectacular. I mean, he has such a bright future, and like I know we've been saying all year on the podcast, I'd like to see him get more carries, and 26 carries. That's a number I'd like to see him get more frequently. Put it that way. Put it that way. So awesome day for the offense. Defense, I went with an A as well. I mean, they literally gave up no points, so that's a good start. I mean, 0 points allowed. Only gave up 288 total yards. Under 300 for the whole game is really good. Gave up only 15 first downs. Helped force 2 turnovers. The interception by Gilmore was nice. They got good pressure. The whole game they really got to the quarterback pretty well, and they were hyping up that guy before the game, saying he was like a number 15 or number 13 passer in the country and stuff. And Marshall made him look like a chump. I mean, it was nice to see. Defense also, held them to 4 of 14 on third down and 0 of 2 on fourth down. So the defense had a really good day, I thought. Obviously the numbers back that up. And anytime you hold a team scoreless, I think that's got to be a very high grade. So what would you give the defense in this one?
I would give the defense. I would give them an A as well. I was gonna say A plus, but
I know I almost did.
I don't know. I don't want to jump the gun because I've seen some pretty great defensive performances by Marshall in the past. So I would stick with an A. The pick by Gilmore was very nice, and I do agree with what you said. They hyped up FIU's quarterback, Borton Slogger, however you...
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But I did see where he ranks top in CUSA. He's top 3 in CUSA for passing, I'm pretty sure. He's really high up there. And Marshall really just made him look like a chump out there. I mean, I didn't see anything special from him. He really looked like a system quarterback at best, but we kept the pressure on him. Blanketed coverage very well this week, which is something that we often don't see. Right. And it really was refreshing to see the defensive backs actually playing up there in the receivers' faces the whole game.
Absolutely. Really great day for the defense, no doubt. Special teams, I went with another one. I went with an A. I went with another A for the special teams. I mean, we were talking a minute ago, we mentioned it. The special teams did a lot of good in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, looking at the field goal kicking a little bit, Chuchi was 1 of 1 on field goals. He hit a 29-yard chip shot, 5 of 5 on extra points. Good stuff there. Willie Johnson had a 38-yard punt return, which was super nice.
Yeah.
Now I will say this much about FIU: they're not a good team. They're pretty bad, but they got a punter.
Oh, dude, he has a cannon for a leg.
That punter,
Goodness.
that punter could play professionally, I think. And that's what my dad, who was with me as well at this game, he said on that punt return, he outkicked the coverage on that. I mean, that's the only reason Willie Johnson probably got as far as he did, because he just flat out kicked it too far.
Yeah.
But it was an awesome punt return from Willie there. Lefevre, didn't have to have a huge game because he didn't have to punt that much. Only about 35 yards to punt. Didn't have to do much, so not bad there. And then the blocked field goal was big. Going into halftime there. Marshall was up 24-0.
Mm-hmm.
FIU was starting to drive a little bit. Maybe if they can make it 24-7, maybe they would have a little glimmer of hope. Even 24-3 would have given them a little bit of momentum. But Marshall shut that down. 2 straight blocked field goals. Even with the timeout, I couldn't believe it. But that was awesome. So, I mean, special teams, this was probably one of their more complete performances of the year, in my opinion. So, what would you give special teams in this one?
I'm going with an A+ for special teams. I mean, we obviously didn't get the chance to return many kickoffs because FIU didn't put points on the board. But punts, like you said, their punter he's NFL level.
Yeah.
At halftime, when special teams gets out there and warms up early, you get to see the punters out there and the kickers out there, and they're just kind of showing off like an exposition. This guy punted one from goal line in the student section, and it landed, I kid you not, on the opposite 25 or 20-yard line.
My gosh.
That's a punt and a half, man.
It's Corey Vedovic like.
Yes, that's impressive. But to limit that punter with the leg he had, to limit them, they never pinned us deep inside the 15, really, I don't even think. And Willie Johnson did an excellent job of escaping some tackles early. And like you said, he had that big punt return, which was probably inches from getting taken to the house.
Yes.
So overall, special teams did a great job. The block kick was a big momentum shifter going into halftime. To call that timeout right there on the first one kind of took the breath out of the stadium, but we still had the 24-point lead. And then I just had a feeling, because their kicker was kind of drilling them a little low. And if you kick it low like that, our guys up front are going to get to it. And I had a feeling, and they did. They blocked it 2 times in a row, so that was a pretty big one. So I would give special teams an A+ this week.
Absolutely. I thought they were absolutely awesome in this game, and it just kind of helped bring the whole well-rounded team effort together, no doubt. But looking at the coaching, the coaching grade this week, I give the coaching an A. I mean, I feel like it was a very good day, off of a bye week. I thought they needed – was it off? Yeah, it was. I had to look for a second. It was off of a bye week. Usually sometimes you come out flat after bye weeks, and, you don't necessarily play the sharpest. And, especially at home with a bad weather, not much atmosphere really going on in the stadium that day. They took it to FIU. I mean, FIU's a bad team, but Marshall, we have seen in the past, they have played, like I said before, played down to their competition. They didn't do that in this game. They played really well for the most part. First quarter was a little bit slow, but from the second quarter on, it was guns a-blazing. I mean, they just didn't really slow down much. So I think you got to commend them for that, getting them ready to go off of a bye week like that with some weird circumstances. Offense did some good things, defense did good things. Special teams, I mean, when it's that good of an overall team game, the coaching deserves a lot of credit for that. So I gave them an A. What would you give the coaching?
I would go with an A as well. I don't want to sell them short, because this week was very good to see. We kept it on them all the way through to the end of the fourth quarter, which is something that we haven't seen in some heartbreaking losses that we've had this year, where we've gotten out to leads and kind of took our foot off the gas a little bit and just started coasting. And we really didn't coast this week. We kept it on them till the late game. I mean, we weren't trying to throw it over top. We were just being efficient and effective with the run and picking up first downs late into the game. which kept our defense from – I mean, our defense in games this year has been on the field a lot, and
Yeah.
it takes the wind out of them. But this week we limited that, so I give the coaching a solid A.
Yeah, I think it was a good day from them. Very good showing. Hopefully, it's a sign. Hopefully, this game and the last couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, that it's a sign of things to come. That's what I hope
Mm-hmm.
for, because it's going to have to be, because it's definitely gut check time as far as the season goes, as far as conference title contention. I mean, they got some tests coming up: FAU, UAB, and Western Kentucky, all in the next 4 games. So it's going to be interesting to see, but that's a good start for sure. Overall, in this game, I went with an A. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Pretty much every grade was an A, so
Yeah.
it kind of has to be an A overall. I mean, it was a very good day. I mean, really good stuff from all sides of the ball in this one. Offense, defense, special teams, coaching, everything was good in this game. And anytime that's like that, 38-0, shutout wins at home shutout wins against conference opponents is always nice, but
Yeah.
it was a good day. It was a very good win for the Herd. Hopefully they can keep it going. So I went overall with an A. What would you give the overall grade?
Yeah, I think A is the fairest thing to give. I'd say an A for sure. We didn't
Yep.
just following suit with all the other grades we've given so far. I would definitely go with an A.
Yep. Pretty much the only thing you can give. It was a really
Yeah.
good game. Here's another question we usually ask after every wrap up, and I'm gonna go ahead and ask you. I don't even think I texted you this about the format or not, but this is just kind of an off the cuff answer, I guess you could give. But what do you know, or what do we know about the Herd after 8 games? What do you think we know about them?
All right. I think we know that they're capable of winning the conference. I think it's something that we've said since even before this season started, that the team we've got weapons, we've got the talent. I mean, it's kind of a new brand of football that we're seeing here. Some games have let us down more than others.
Yeah.
We definitely know that the pass game is a little wishy-washy,
Right.
and compared to what it was mid-season last year. But another thing I would say is that the run game is following suit with previous years. I mean, Ali the shoes that this guy has had to come in and try to fill of Brendan Knox's is very difficult. Hard shoes to fill. But I'd say he's filling them pretty decently. He's no Brendan Knox, but he's the guy for us this year. I mean, he's probably our best player on offense this year if I would have to pick one. So on offense, that's what we know about the Herd, is that they're a little wishy-washy in the passing game, and that the run game is just up to par with previous years. Defensively, I think we're solid. Our secondary is sketchy at times, but winning the game up front is something that we're going to do pretty much on a weekly basis. And we're getting to the ball. We're tackling well for the most part. Unless it gets to the second level, then our secondary kind of just throws themselves towards the runner. But overall, I think the Herd's in decent shape. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, and I like your point about Rasheen Ali. Comparing him to Brendan Knox it's kind of hard to do, because they're very different players. I mean, Knox was they're both kind of similar builds, but Knox was more, I'm going to lower my head and just try to run you over type player. He was more of a bruiser, although he wasn't 240 or 250 pounds, but he was more of a bruiser. Ali, I made this comparison a while back. He kind of reminds me of like prime Le'Veon Bell in a lot of ways, because he runs extremely patient. His cuts are absolutely just nuts. The way he can stop on a dime and find the hole. I mean, he just is a very patient runner. He's a special guy. I mean, I remember Huff saying in one of his press conferences that one of their practices they had this offseason, Maurice Claret was there. He used to be a great player for Ohio State, of course. And he was watching him, and he didn't even know who Rasheen Ali was. And he asked Huff who that was. And, he said, "Who is this?" And he said, "This guy looks like a first-round draft pick caliber talent." And, Rasheen Ali, he's only a sophomore. So if he has a couple more years at this rate, he could absolutely get drafted pretty daggone
Yeah,
high. I mean,
undoubtedly.
he else. And like last year, you really didn't get to see him much for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But this year, yeah, you're getting to see him, and the rest of the conference knows now that he's some force of nature to be rough. So I can't wait to see the future for sure. But very good win here against FIU Marshall. Good stuff here. They're going to need to build upon that because that's the next part of the part into now. We're starting with a very big game. FIU looms for Marshall. Road game coming up on Saturday night. 6 o'clock, I think 6 o'clock kickoff
Yeah.
against the Owls in Boca. Marshall and FAU sit at 5-3 on the year, 3-1 conference. There's a 3-team tie for first place in the East right now. FAU, Marshall, and Western Kentucky. So this is a huge game right here. The current spread favors Marshall by 1.5, but FAU has a 53.3% chance to win according to ESPN. So it's kind of a coin toss game, is what it seems like. And all indicators, things are showing or seem to lead to the fact that this could be a close game. So you gotta keep your eye out. I think especially if you're a Western Kentucky fan, you're really in this game. You're watching this one pretty close because whichever team takes this L in this one, that you jumped them, and now Western Kentucky's sitting in a little better spot. So this is a big game for the East right here, really for the East. Marshall and FAU have had a very interesting hit of years. You could say,
Yeah.
ever since FAU Conference USA, it's been the win-loss record has been one-sided for obvious reasons. Marshall's got a 7-1 all-time record over. However, close ones. A lot of those games have been compelling, entertaining games. The social media has helped this series out tremendously.
Yes, it has.
you could say. So it's nowhere near the Moonshine Throwdown, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on this podcast, but it's a pretty good series. Let's be real. It's a good series. It's probably Marshall's best other quote unquote rivalry in Conference USA, in my opinion. So good stuff out of these two teams over the years. Looking at a few players for FAU, a few guys to look out for. Quarterback Nkosi Perry, who is a Miami transfer. He on the season he is 132 out of 219, passing for 1,845 yards, 15 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions, so a good touchdown-interception ratio. He's been a little wishy-washy too this year, seeing some of his numbers and some of the games he's played. So, it could be which quarterback makes more mistakes than the other is what could that could determine the game. Leading rusher for the Owls, Johnny Ford. He's got 77 carries on the year for 96 yards and 4 touchdowns. Leading receiver is LeJontay Wester. He's got 37 receptions for 462 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then leading tackle for FAU is Jordan Helm, who's got 55 total tackles on the year, 2 passes defended, 1 interception, and 2 fumble recoveries. So FAU, they've been trending in the right direction over the last 2 or 3 years, ever since Lane Kiffin got there and then obviously left. But Lane Kiffin got him really heading in the right direction, got him a conference title in 2017 and 2019. Last year, in year one of Willie Taggart, they kind of fell down a little bit. COVID hit them pretty hard. They were still, I think, 5-4 or something like that last year. But this year they're in a pretty good spot right now. They much like Marshall, they've been a little inconsistent this year based on some of the games and the results and everything. But these teams seem to be relatively evenly matched based on all the odds and what people think. But this is a huge game. There's no other way to say it. This is a huge game. What do you think about this game as an outlook, a broad look at it? What do you think about this game heading into it?
Well, I think we're going into this game with a little bit of momentum. Obviously, beating FIU is definitely big moving forward.
Yeah.
So, FAU definitely has some spark guys in their offense, some spark plug guys who, I mean, their quarterback, 15 touchdowns to 4 interceptions is pretty solid. And
Yeah.
he's dual threat from what I've seen. He's
Mm-hmm.
mobile and can get out of the pocket and make throws. But it's almost fluky. A lot of their highlights that I've seen, their touchdowns come off some pretty fluky type of plays. So I don't know. It's going to be up there in terms of who's going to win this game. Like you said, it really could come down to QB play for both teams. Whoever's quarterback plays the best and whoever turns the ball over less is probably going to win the game.
Yep. I mean, that's been Marshall's that has almost single-handedly determined Marshall games over the
Yeah.
last few years, is whether or not they turn the ball over or not. And more times than not, when they have 2, 3, 4 turnovers, they're going to lose. And when they have 0 turnovers or maybe only 1, then they're probably going to win. It just seems like I couldn't tell you the numbers for sure, but I feel like that's what the case has been over the last few years. So it's going to be big in terms of mistakes. Whoever can play the most disciplined game. No self-inflicting mistakes and penalties and things like that. And this game could get chippy a little bit. These teams. A lot of these players played with each other in high school and against each other in high school, and a lot of guys from the state of Florida on both of these rosters. So it could get a little chippy. I mean, social media, I'm sure will have that has helped kind of grow the disdain for each fan base for the other. That's kind of helped grow that. So this one, they could get a little chippy at times, and I would not be
Definitely.
surprised. Would not be surprised at all. But what? Looking at FAU a little closer, maybe not who, but what about FAU kind of scares you the most in this game?
The mobility of their quarterback, if I'm being honest. I think they've struggled containing mobile quarterbacks in past years, and I don't really think we've faced a true dual threat QB this year, but maybe once. But that's probably what scares me the most. And I think if we can contain that, that will be all right. Because I don't think that their quarterback Perry is much of a pocket presence as
Right.
other QBs that we've faced. So, like I said, he can get out of the pocket and improvise, which is what scares me because I feel like once a play kind of gets broken and our corners kind of have to freestyle, then that's when we blow a lot of coverages.
Absolutely, and we have seen probably more than several times recent years that they have absolutely struggled with mobile quarterbacks. I mean, I don't remember if it was last year, well, it probably wasn't last year, but maybe the year before last, we talked a lot on this podcast, or maybe even before that every week, when you get a mobile quarterback that can run the ball, I'll give you one in particular, Asher O'Hara from Middle Tennessee. Always gave Marshall fits.
Mm-hmm.
He could run the ball extremely well. A pretty good passer. I feel like that's kind of like the best I can give him. Pretty good, but like he could absolutely run the ball well. And guys like that have given Marshall fit. So I like that point you make there because Perry, he can run the ball. He's pretty mobile. So
Mm-hmm.
looking at this game, I'll go ahead and give my 4 keys to victory, and then Lenny, I'll let you get into yours. But first key to victory in this one, I think, for Marshall is I think they need a fast start. I don't think this is the game where you can afford to fall behind 14-0 or whatever. I don't think that's the game. This is the game you can afford to do that. I mean, FAU is going to be pumped. They're going to whatever crowd they have, but it's going to be a hyped, energetic, lively type of atmosphere, I think. And they want this game bad. I mean, they always joke about Marshall. For some reason fans think that Marshall or FAU is Marshall's Super Bowl. I really think it's more the other way around. But
Yeah.
I digress there. But I think they need I think to come out smoking, come out on fire. No, I mean, I'm not even saying jump out on them necessarily. You have to play well out of the gate. I don't think you can afford a slow one. I mean, maybe the first drive or two, but not a quarter, not the quarters. You got to come out better. You got to come out pretty fast. So see that. My next point, I think you got to get Xavier Gaines going in this game. It's a broken record at this point. I'm just going to keep saying it over and over. I want to see Xavier Gaines more. The ball in his hands, good things happen. I'd like to see that in this one. I don't know how many other ways I can say it, because we've said it so many times over the years on this podcast and on Twitter and everything else, and not just us, fans. A lot of fans have said Xavier Gaines needs the ball more. He might be their best athlete on offense, but unfortunately he's gotten the ball. So I'd like to see that in this, because I think he is a different, and I think he could be a major difference maker game. Next point is, I think you got to get to the quarterback. It's like you said. I mean, he's a mobile quarterback. So I'd like to see Marshall get back there and make life difficult. Get in his space, even if he's running into something going with his feet. If you got 2 or 3 white shirts around you, gonna go for long.
Yeah.
If you light him up a couple of times, that's gonna change. That's gonna change how he plays. I think that if they can get to the quarterback, maybe get 3 or 4 sacks or more, that would be spectacular. That'd be great. Just make it hard on him. If you can do that and get to the quarterback consistently, I like Marshall's chances in this game. And then my last point is, and I've said it already a couple times since we've started talking about this game, you got to limit the self-inflicting mistakes, because Marshall's had a lot of those over the years in games, especially on the road. Sometimes they just look totally lost and clueless on the road and just do some of the stupidest stuff. And I would like to see the trend that they've been doing continue. The last game, only 2 penalties. In the North Texas game, they played very clean as well. I'd like to see that trend continue, because you can't afford to give FAU extra opportunities to score and, all that kind of thing. So Marshall has to play a clean, game, no self-inflicting. Well, I'm not going to say no self-inflicting mistakes, because that's not realistic. Yeah. But you have to limit them. You can't let it be a bad trend of every other play screwing up something. So that's a big one there. So, Lenny, what are your 4 keys to victory for this game for the Herd?
Well, to start, half the battle is going to be won on Twitter. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But honestly, in terms of fans, it is going to be. I mean, it's FAU's always at Marshall on Twitter. It's kind of funny to see. It's like you said, we're their Super Bowl.
And they think it's the other way around. So, I just don't get it.
It means the world to them to make a Marshall fan mad. But in all honesty, my first key to victory is establishing the run, keeping the pressure off of Wells in terms of just getting the run game going so that he's not forced to make any crazy or difficult throws. 2, I would say defensively, winning the battle up front and containing their quarterback, not letting him get out of the pocket and improvise. Having somebody in his face every time he goes to throw is going to go a long way. 3, I would say just to keep our foot on the gas the whole game. When we get a lead, look to add to that lead. No empty trips in the red zone is something that if I could display to that team, it'd be no empty trips to the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
And 4, I would say just no drive killers, no momentum killers. So no turnovers obviously is kind of an unrealistic expectation, but just limit the turnovers, limit the mistakes, and like you said, play a clean game.
Yep, that'll go a long way to getting the win. And I like your point about the red zone offense. There's been obvious issues with the red zone offense this year. They've gotten down there so many times and just haven't been able to get the job done. Haven't been able to punch in the end zone. It seems like when they run out of field is when things start getting a little squirrely. No intended from the last game, but no, I wouldn't even talk about the squirrel. Oh my gosh, but no, I think that if they can do as much of those things that we said as humanly possible, then I think they should win the game. But I'm not saying it's going to be easy because I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be one of those typical Marshall games that take years off of your life. But we'll see. We will see. So as far as my 200 proof player goes, which I said to you, it's like who we think is going to be the player of the game, essentially. So my 200 proof player for this game, and he was one of my keys to victory. I said Xavier Gaines. So I'm going to go with Xavier Gaines as my 200 proof player. I think I probably picked him before, this season, maybe once or twice, but I really want to see him I want to see them make a conceited effort to get him the ball more.
Yeah.
I just think that would be big for the offense. I mean, every time he catches the ball or touches the ball, he makes something out of nothing, or he goes for a pretty deep play. So I just think he's a guy that's dynamic, extremely dynamic, versatile, athletic as all get out, and I want to see him get targeted more than 3 times a game. I mean, it just goes without saying, if you don't get the guy the ball enough, he's not going to be able to do anything with it. So I want to see Xavier Gaines unleashed and established in this game. Probably not going to happen, but I'd love to see it. And I'm going to roll with him as my 200 proof player. So Lenny, who is your 200 proof player in this game?
Well, I'll hold off on mine for just a second, but I do like what you said about Xavier Gaines. He's a Kyle Pitts type of guy who you could honestly play an offense through. You could really run an offense through him, get him the ball. We never see him with the ball in space, rarely.
No.
And that's when he's best, is when he can improvise and make plays and use his strength to run somebody over, or his agility to make somebody miss on a tackle. And I do agree with you on that it's something we need to do more, is get Xavier the ball. But for me, I'm not going to say Grant Wells, even though QB play makes or breaks games. So personally, I would go with Rasheen Ali, just because every game that he's gone off in, we've pretty much won. So I think if he gets over 100 yards on the ground, we win this game.
I like that pick because I think, and I would agree with you, I think if he goes for 100 yards, the $120, $150, I think Marshall's got this one. I just don't think that they, because that's going to open up the passing game too, because they're going to have to try to game plan around stopping Ali, and that's going to bring in all the coverage. And then Willie Johnson or Gamage or Gaines, they're going to get behind somebody. So I like that pick for sure. So now is when we get to the meat of the whole thing here. We got to pick the score prediction. I kind of been struggling with this pick actually because I wasn't sure exactly what I was thinking. I've been thinking Marshall in a close game, but I'm gonna stick with Marshall in a close one. I'm gonna say Marshall 31-28. I don't necessarily have a lot of confidence still in them. I mean, the jury's still out. I'm still a little unsure as to whether or not they've actually turned a corner or not, and if they're going to start playing more consistently. They've been really good signs recently, but now it's the biggest test that they've in a while, because on the road against a good team, a conference title contender, and this is a game that could make or break your conference title run. So I'm going to say Marshall gets a narrow win, 31-28. I would like it to be more comfortable than that for my heart's purpose, but I don't. We know how that goes. So, what your score, Marshall and FAU?
I'm going to say 34-31. I think it's going to be a close one. It could be decided by a field goal. It could be decided by a field goal. I think it'll end up being one possession game, though.
Yeah, well, that's one thing about this series is the very first time these teams played in 2013, Justin Haig hit a walk-off 41-yard field goal to win the game at FAU. So we've seen that before. It could be that again. I mean, who knows? But I think both fan bases, both teams would expect a close game either way, I think. So we'll see. Hopefully Marshall just shocks us and just beats the brakes off of them. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome. But I'm certainly not going to hold my breath. But we shall see. So Lenny, give me a little bit. We always do final thoughts after everything. So if you have any final thoughts about anything, it doesn't even have to be about these games or whatever. Just hit me up with some final thoughts before we get out of here.
Yeah. So final thoughts. I think that Marshall's got it figured out for the most part. I think it just comes down to if they can execute or not. Really, I mean, It's going to come down to QB play for the rest of the year. Honestly, I think if Grant Wells kind of craps the bed the rest of this year, then he's not guaranteed that starting role next year.
Cole Pennington's coming.
Yeah, so that's a toss-up, but I think this Saturday is going to be a teller for how we're going to play the rest of the year personally. And, I mean, there's definitely things I would like to see as a fan, like getting the ball to Xavier, like you said.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, it doesn't even have to be to him. Just, I mean, we don't see a lot of back shoulder fades to Gamage either. And he's an absolute red zone threat. So there's a lot of things as a fan that we don't really get to see, but that would be nice to see. And I think if we could get the ball to our playmakers, that we would win a lot more and put a lot more points on the board instead of having those empty trips.
Yep. No doubt. I mean, it's common sense. I mean, when you got guys like Xavier Gaines and Corey Gamage and Willie Johnson and these guys, you got to get them the ball. I mean, you got to get them out in space and get them the ball. I mean, they can't always be just out routes or curl routes or whatever. Like, you got to do a little more to it, a little more with it than that. And I think that's been a big issue that Herd fans have mentioned. It's like the creativity just hasn't been there with Kim Cramsey as offensive over the last few years. So hopefully, like you said, hopefully we get to see something different there. But as far as my final thoughts goes, we haven't even, which that's a whole other can of worms. We don't even want to open that yet. But we haven't talked about the Sun Belt yet, or at least on here. But I personally am a big fan of it. I think it's awesome. I think it's honestly the best place that they could end up because, looking at the Sun Belt, they have some quality programs in that conference. And, it's getting better now because, they're adding some different teams. They're adding Southern Miss. It looks like they're going to add James Madison, who's always good in football. Old Dominion's got some good sports. I mean, they're not much for football, but they have a good athletics programs overall. And then, you got your Appalachian States and your Coastal Carolinas and Troy and Georgia Southern and programs that are established that have won. And, I think it's great. I think it's a great move because you cannot afford to stay in the Conference USA that will be in the future. Can't.
No, I mean, it's a bad look.
It is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it might as well be an FCS conference at this point because they just don't have anybody left now. And it's like, Jeff O'Malley said at the Sun Belt press conference the other day, he said the answer to the question of what channel is Marshall on this week is going to become a lot easier because the Sun Belt has a deal with ESPN through 2031, and every Marshall game will be on some type of ESPN family of networks.
Yeah.
Some type of, it could be ESPN, ESPN2, News, ESPNU, whatever, ESPN Plus. It's going to be on something. And, that wasn't always the case. So it's very exciting to see. But Lenny, thanks for joining the podcast. Really appreciate it. Had a lot of good conversations and stuff. We'd like to have you on again sometime, but
me for a second. I had to re-enter.
I saw that.
I don't know what really happened. But yeah.
I'll just give a couple seconds and I'll start back.
Okay.
But yeah, Lenny, thanks for joining the podcast. We had a lot of fun on here. I know you were going to do a great job, just because, like I said before, you know what you're talking about when it comes to Marshall, and and it's good to know. It's good to have that kind of stuff on here. It's good to have different guests. We haven't really had very many guests this year, so you're welcome back on anytime. Hopefully we can get the full game together at some point, and that'd be really cool. But we appreciate you coming on. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up here with a Go Herds, and we will see y'all next time later.
Thank you.